Hello, all dear friends of TYBSc Physics, those who are appearing for this Savitribai Phule Pune University Pune final examination, which is scheduled in October 2020. For the paper of nuclear physics, the examination is scheduled for 1 hour duration, and there will be total 50 numerical multiple choice questions. Some questions may be based upon theory pattern, as well as few questions may be based upon numerical pattern. So let us try to understand and solve some of the multiple choice physics questions, nuclear physics questions, that will help us in the preparation of the examination which is scheduled in October 2020. Here I have recorded a lecture on the very basic fundamental things that we study in the nuclear physics, like composition of nucleus, binding energy, and few important reactions in nuclear physics, terminology used, few concepts and definitions used, and so on. So let's check one by one simple questions, very simple questions on the nuclear physics, which are called as multiple choice questions. You'll find here some of the questions have 5 options, so we have to choose or correct option, as well as there some of the questions are numerical, there may be 4 options, again we have to go for that. So for each questions we'll go discussing these questions in brief, and wherever required I will explain the things in brief as required in the case. Okay, now first question, an unknown chemical element is presented by the following formula XAZ. What is the name of index Z? Now this is the methodology that is used in nuclear physics to write any element as in its symbol. So X represents name of the element or the symbol for the element, then this Z written here in the subscript and A written in the superscript. So this A is the atomic number, sorry, mass number, and this Z is nothing but either proton number, or we can call it to be the atomic number. So these are the two words, atomic number. Okay, as we know, for example 6C12, this is the carbon atom which contains 12 number of protons and 12 number of nucleons and 6 number of protons. So 6 number of protons, so this addition N plus Z is equal to E. In case of carbon we have 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and that gives you total number of nucleons is 12. So that's how for this question an unknown chemical element is presented by this symbol XAZ. What is the name index Z? So Z is from this atomic mass number, atomic number, principal quantum number, orbital quantum number, and magnetic quantum number. So these are related to this atom and atomic physics. So here we require this to be atomic number. So this B is the correct answer for that. Atomic mass number is nothing but A, atomic number is nothing but Z. So that is to be understood, and with this simple example we understand what will be the correct answer for this question. Now next, second question is an unknown chemical element is okay, sorry, this question is just repeated. We will move to the question number 3. The atomic number is equivalent to which of the following? Just now we have discussed the atomic number is the number of neutrons in the atom, that is option A. The number of protons in the atom, the number of nucleons in the atom, the number of alpha particles in the atom, and number of none of the above. So here it exactly gives you, as I said earlier, so Z plus N, number of protons plus number of neutrons, is equal to number of nucleons. So this is the nucleons, these are the number of neutrons, and these are the number of protons, as we say, and therefore this Z represents protons, or this is also called as atomic number. So these elements, all these elements are placed in the periodic table on the basis of their atomic number. So this Z varies for each and every element, and therefore we can get its position fixed in the periodic table based upon this, and therefore atomic number is nothing but the number of protons in the atom. Hence B is the correct answer of this question number 3. Next, question number 4. Now the atomic mass number, that is the difference here. The atomic mass number is equivalent to which of the following? Just now we have discussed this number of nucleons, here we have replaced. This is called as atomic mass number. Mass number. So it is the total number of nucleons consisting or in that particular nucleus. So number of protons is atomic number, whereas total number of nucleons, addition of protons plus neutrons, is the total number of nucleons. So herefore I can give here the option A is number of neutrons in the atom is not correct, number of protons in the atom, that is also not correct, and the number of nucleons in the atom, this is the correct option here, we can understand, and the number of alpha particles of course not case, none of the above is also not there. So first 3-4 questions are exactly which is based upon the composition of the nucleus. Then question number 5, which of the following particles has smallest mass? Now proton, electron, nucleus and nucleon. So actually here you will find that in any case of the nucleus consists of neutrons and protons, and electrons are supposed to revolve around them in the circular orbit or elliptical orbits and like that. So this is the nucleus is much heavy as compared to electrons consist of that. So we say that more than 99.99% of mass of the atom is composed in the nucleus. This is 99%, and it is just around 0.01%. This is the mass in case of this electron. Therefore naturally here the smallest mass particle, if we go for, this will be an electron. So in terms of energy, I think you might have also studied this earlier. In the energy mass, according to energy mass equivalence, we calculate mass of electron, or we have been given mass of electron is just 0.51 MeV, million electron volts. This E is equal to mc square formula can be used for that, whereas mass of proton or any of the, it is around 938 MeV, some fraction is there, and this Mn, mass of neutron, is bigger than that, 938 point something. So mass of neutron is greater than mass of the proton. So this electron, mass of the proton and neutron is almost 1836 times more than the mass of the protons, as well as a smaller mass of the electron is 136 times smaller than the mass of protons and neutrons or nucleons in collectively, and therefore smallest mass particle basically here is the electron and nothing else. That is the question number 5. Now question 6, which of the following statement about the mass of an atom is true? Okay, there are 5 options. It is evenly divided between the protons and the orbiting electrons, that is not our picture. It is evenly divided between the nucleons and the orbiting electron, that is also not true. As I said, 99.99% of the mass is in the nucleus, so definitely it is concentrated in the electron cloud. This is also not correct. It is concentrated in the nucleus, so that is the option which tells you the entire mass of the atom is concentrated into the nucleus, and therefore question number 6 correct option is this D, okay, as given by this. Now question number 7, again simple one, which of the following is correct for the number of neutrons in the nucleus? So if I know this relationship, total number of protons plus total number of neutrons is equal to number of nucleons. Therefore, I'll get n is equal to a minus z. So here n is equal to a minus z. This relationship, first or A option, is the correct option for that question. Okay. Now let's go to the next. These are again related to composition of the different nucleus, which we have studied earlier. How many, question number 8, how many electrons are in the 6C12 carbon atom? As we know, as we have been given earlier, this A is equal to n plus z. So this is 12, and therefore this can be, if proton number is going to be 6, number of neutron here must be equal to 6, and therefore how many electrons, we have been asked electrons, number of neutrons is 6, number of protons is 6, and we know that every atom consists of same number of electrons, which is equal to the number of protons. So if whatever number of protons are there, equal number of electrons are there, and therefore number of electrons in this carbon's atom is only 6, and therefore option B is the correct. Now next question is 9th, is again based upon same. How many nucleons are in the 10Ne? This is neon atom, 10Na20 atom. So again you can use this, A is equal to n plus z, and therefore total will be, in this case, is nothing but 20. So E is the correct option. That gives you total number of nucleons inside the nucleus of neon. Then how many protons in the 7n14 atom? It's very simple. So naturally this represents, this 7 represents here the number of protons, and therefore C is the correct answer for that. So all these questions are related to the composition of the nucleus, and that can be understood. Now question number 11, what law did Ernst Rutherford use to estimate the size of the nucleus? You might be knowing with this is the, we take this is to be a nucleus. The alpha particles are bombarded over this nucleus, and this alpha particle goes this interaction like this way. So it has momentum initially in this direction, and when it goes after deflection, it will have momentum as shown here. So this is y direction, this is x direction moment, and therefore we use conservation of momentum principle. Before interaction, it is at a rest, therefore it has no momentum. So momentum of this is only in the positive x direction, and here momentum gets changed in the positive x direction as well as y direction, and therefore here the principle of linear momentum is used, and neither of this. Therefore correct option for this question number 11 is C. Conservation of linear momentum is basically used to calculate the range of this alpha particle, which is reflected by this nucleus, positively charged nucleus. Alpha particle itself is a positively charged nucleus, and that tells you how much is the size of the nucleus, or the approximate radius of the nucleus can be obtained. And based upon this experiment, we know that there is an empirical relation for the radius of the nucleus, which is given by R is equal to R0 times A raised to 1 by 3. So where A is nuclear number or atomic mass number, this one third power of that gives you this number, and this R0 is the radius of the hydrogen nucleus, that is 1h1, or that is the proton, and that is going to be a constant. So this relationship is known to us. Based upon that, one can find out radius of any nucleus if its total number of nucleons are known. Okay, that is what another additional information related to this question number 11. Then question number, these numbers are again missed here. Next question is why are nuclear energy levels more complex than the electron energy levels? Of course, as we discussed just now, in a very small space all these nucleons are contained together, and therefore they have very high energy, whereas electrons which are moving around nucleus in the circular or elliptical orbits, they have very small masses, and therefore here the appropriate answer of this, why these energy levels are more complex, is that nuclear, these are the 4 options. Nuclear energy levels depend only on attractive force. That is not exactly correct. Then nuclear energy levels depend on attractive and repulsive force. That is also not properly correct. Nuclear energy levels are of an order of 100 times as great of the electron energy levels. That is what the correct answer. Electron energy levels are very that the energy of these levels is very small as compared to the nuclear energy level. Hence, that's if nuclear energy levels are more complicated or complex than the electron's energy levels, and therefore C is the correct answer for this new question. Next, which of the following about the nuclear force is true? We have learned about this nuclear force. There are several properties of the nuclear force. We also shown that this is attractive, always attractive. This is property. Then it is a tensor force. Okay, and this is a third, saturation type of force, and summa. And this is what we have already discussed, these properties of this. So here let's go for one by one option. It is an attractive force between electron and protons in the atom. That is not correct. It is an attractive force between electrons and neutrons in an atom. That is also not correct. So it is much weaker than the electronic force. This is also not true. It is much weaker than the gravitational force. This is also not true. It is the strongest force, and therefore it is a strong, short range, then attractive force between nucleons. So this is the force between protons and neutrons inside the nucleus. So it is short range too. This is short range, this is saturated, this is tensor force, and this is always attractive force. So all these things, and it is strongest of all known forces. So this is strongest of all known forces. So these are the properties of this short range nuclear force, of the strong nuclear force, which is existing between protons and neutrons, or protons and protons, or neutrons and neutrons. And there are few more properties of this. This is charge independent, and also you have heard about this. This is spin dependent. So these are the properties of these short range forces or nuclear force that we have come across in the discussion. Then next, 13. What force is responsible for the radioactive decay of the nucleus? Remember, gravitational force is not at all. Weak nuclear force, then strong nuclear force, and electromagnetic force. So here actually beta radioactive decay, in that case this weak nuclear force is the correct answer. Okay, so actually it would have beta radioactive decay. This question should have beta radioactive decay. Then the proper answer would be weak nuclear force. That is the case for the example number 13. Then 14, isotopes of an element. Again, we have studied this earlier. So number of protons, if it is same, then this is called as isotope. If number of neutron, if it is same, then it is isotone. And when number of A is same for 2 or 3 nuclei, then they are called as isobar. So this, once this is known, I can go for this answer here. Isotopes of an element have the same number of protons and electrons. Okay, electrons and number of protons is just always same, but different number of neutrons. Have same number of protons and neutrons, but different number of electrons. That is also not correct. Have different number of protons. That is not correct. Have different number of electrons. That is also not correct. And have the same number of neutrons and protons. This is also not correct. So here this first answer, A, option A is the correct option for this question number 14. Now 15, as we know, binding energy. It is the amount of, so we know that binding energy is the energy required. Suppose these are the protons and neutrons, either forming this nucleus from individual number of protons and neutrons, amount of energy released, or once nucleus is formed, to break into its different parts, its components. So amount of energy required, that is called as binding energy, or with that energy this nucleus is bound together. That's why we can go for the study of this question number 15. The amount of energy required to break a nucleus apart into its protons and neutrons, that is the components. the amount of energy required to break nucleus apart into protons and electron, that is not correct because electron is not a part of nucleus at all. The amount of energy required to break the nucleus apart into electrons and neutrons, that is also not correct because electron is also never a part of the nucleus. Even nucleus cannot stay inside the electron cannot stay inside the nucleus at any cost at any time. The amount of energy released when the neutrons change energy levels, that is also not correct, and amount of energy released when protons change the energy level. So all the options, 4 options remaining, are incorrect. So first option A is the correct option for the binding energy. Now here example number 16, this is where we have been given mass. Mh is the mass of atomic mass of hydrogen, or that is what proton we can call. Mn is the mass of the neutron, and capital M is the mass of the atom. Which of the following is called as mass defect formula? So mass defect is the total mass of the constituents minus mass of the nucleus, and that's why we have to add total masses of protons and neutrons together, and we have to subtract from it the mass of the nucleus after it gets formed. Then that amount of mass is actually gets disappeared, and that is what the binding energy or the equivalent amount of energy is released in this process, and that is what nothing but the binding energy. Therefore, amongst given all options, this option A is most correct because all these options are not correct, and that shows you the correct option is delta M, mass defect, is equal to Z times Mh, mass of the protons, plus N times mass of the neutrons. These are added together before this nucleus is formed, minus this mass of the nucleus when it is formed from the number of protons and number of neutrons, and that gives you the mass disappeared or the mass defect, and that is the amount of equivalent energy released in this process, or that is nothing but the binding energy. Now next 17, when the nucleus forms a stable nucleus, binding energy is created from nothing, destroyed into nothing, transformed into visible light, absorbed as high energy photons or particles, and finally released as high energy photons or particles. That is what the energy, amount of energy released when the nucleus is formed, that is called as binding energy, and therefore E option is the actual correct option for this question number 17. So that is how forming a nucleus from its constituents, some amount of energy is released either in the form of the photons or in the form of particles, and that is called as binding energy. The next 18, when a nucleus is divided into its constituents, energy is created from nothing. Okay, now it is divided into its components, destroyed into nothing, transformed into visible light, absorbed. Now when it gets formed, energy is released. So when it gets broken, energy is absorbed, and therefore D option is the most appropriate and correct answer when this particular nucleus gets divided into its components. Okay, so just a minute. Hello sir. Yeah, good afternoon. Yeah. Okay, okay. I'm actually in lecture now. So once I complete this, I'll join you. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, friends. Then 19, an isotope with high binding energy per nucleon. Again, remember, whatever amount of energy, binding energy per nucleon, if number is high, there is more stability. If binding energy per nucleon is less, very small, then that nucleus is very, very unstable. So that happens in case of nuclei in the lighter nuclei from 1 to 20, A equal to 1 to 20, as well as it is found that the nuclei having very high mass number, in that case also binding energy per nucleon is found to be less than that, and the maximum binding energy per nucleon is found to be for ferrous 28 Fe, and it is maximum for of the element, and that's why if you remember this particular curve, binding energy per nucleon curve, this curve has some spikes, then reaches maximum and it starts following. So this is binding energy per nucleon, and this is the actual number of nucleons, and then this energy, this particular curve is called as binding energy per nucleon. This first region, okay, small region where two small nuclei come together and form a heavier nuclei, that region is called as fusion, and this region from where this heavier nuclei is broken into two smaller nuclei. This region is called as the fission region. Okay, so this is the fission and this is the fusion part, and most of the elements which found in this range, they have to have its binding energy per nucleon more. So whether you go for this side or this side, binding energy is released, and that is the energy generation process or energy generation phenomenon either in nuclear fission as well as nuclear fusion. And therefore you will find that the maximum here is this, and this is your Fe, ferrous. Ferrous is the element which is having maximum binding energy per nucleon. Therefore here we will go an isotope with highest binding energy or high binding energy per nucleon will decay in a short period of time. That is not correct. Is very unstable. This is also not correct. Is very stable. Okay, not enough. C is not there. It is very stable. This is the correct answer, and C is the correct answer. Has very few electrons. This is irrelevant. Has more number of electrons and neutrons. That is also not proper there. So C is the answer of this question number 19. 20. Why do heavier nuclei have a greater ratio of neutrons to protons than lighter nuclei? You maybe we have drawn this curve earlier, the Z versus N curve. So number of neutrons versus number of protons curves. Ideally we expect this curve should be like this. So whatever number of protons should be equal to number of neutrons there, but you find this actual curve goes as we go for higher and higher number of nuclei. This deviation shows number of neutrons goes on increasing as the number of proton goes on increases, because as we know, when the number of nucleons goes on increasing, more and more number of protons are added. Now there forms an electromagnetic repulsion between number of protons, and to overcome this repulsion, more number of neutrons are needed to contain all these protons inside a very small space, otherwise which will get broken down because of this repulsive force between all protons. And to overcome that, more number of neutrons are needed naturally, and therefore this curve N versus Z curve goes upward as we go for higher and higher more number of the nucleon there. Okay, so why do heavier nuclei have greater ratio of neutrons to proton than lighter nuclei? As we said, to add more nucleons so that binding energy is greater, to provide a greater weak nuclear force, to provide a more attractive electromagnetic force, to provide more attractive strong nuclear force, to balance the repulsive electromagnetic force between protons. So this option D is the maximum correct answer as we have shown in this case. So there is no need to read option E. Then next, which of the following is alpha particle? So we always known that alpha particle is nothing but helium nucleus, and helium nucleus is twice He4. So this is the correct option here. 1H1 is proton, 1H2 is deuteron, 1H2 is, this is proton, then this is deuterium, then this is tritium, and this is your alpha particle or helium nucleus. So one can understand very easily, this twice He3, 2 protons, 2 neutrons. So total number of nucleons are 4 and 2 protons are there, that is this. Now which of the following is beta particle? So beta particle is necessarily a negatively charged particle. It is just an electron. So symbol for electron is 0, electron and -1. So this is charge, this is mass number of electron is 0 because it is not a part of particle of the nucleus. So this is 0, charge is -1, and therefore this option C is the correct option for the beta minus particle, beta decay. Whereas beta plus particle will be exactly opposite to this. So this is also having its mass number to be, or this atomic number to be 0, symbol is the same, and in this case this will be a plus charge, and that is nothing but, so this is called as electron, this is called as positron, and these are antiparticles of each other. So when we go for the next, that is the particle physics, in that case also we come across this point. So these are called as antiparticles of each other. So beta minus particle is pure electron and beta plus particle is positron, and therefore it will have its charge to be +1, and therefore this B is the correct option as shown in this particular example. Then now few more questions are there, we will go for this and then we will stop. Last 5 questions. which of the following is the gamma above the gamma ray is true? Now we know that alpha particle is helium nucleus, has positive charge, beta particle is an electron having negative charge, and gamma particles are simply electromagnetic photons. They don't have charge as well as they don't have any mass. So it carries positive charge is not correct. This is alpha particle. It carries negative charge. This is also not correct. It is beta particle in radioactive decay. It can be deflected by magnetic field. Again, not possible in case of gamma rays. It can be deflected by electric field. This is also not possible. And that is what last option. It has zero rest mass and neutral charge. So it has no charge and no mass. That's why these are photons, and this is what a gamma particles. Then question 25, which type of radiation is stopped by a sheet of paper? I think you might have gone for this penetration power, alpha radiations, beta radiations, gamma radiations. Now if we have three pieces, so this is paper, okay, then this is some metal, and if I have a lead block here, you will find that this very rarely can pass. This will be blocked here, whereas these particles will be blocked here, and gamma particle will cross through this as well as this. So penetration power of this is maximum, it has intermediate, and it has minimum. Okay. So minimum penetration power, that is alpha particle, medium intermediate for beta particle, and maximum for gamma radiations, because these are simply photons. Therefore, which type of radiation is stopped by the sheet of paper? As I said, alpha particle will be stopped, beta particle will go through paper, gamma particle will also go through paper, and X-rays also can go through the paper. Therefore, correct answer is this alpha particle, because they are heavy and positively charged particle. Now, this next problem is related to this half-life and of a material. So, a 100-gram sample of radioactive element has half-life of 5 days. So we know that after 5 days, 100, that means at today 0 days it was 100 grams. After 5 days it will be 50 grams. Next 5 days, that means after 10 days it will remain 25 grams. After 15 days half of that will remain, so it is 12.5 grams. So that is what we have to understand. After every 5 days the amount of radioactive material becomes half of its original. So today if it is 100 grams, after 5 days it will become 50 grams, then after 5 days, that means total 10 days, it will be 25 grams, and then after 15 days, that means after more 5 days, that means total 15 days, it will become 12.5. So here a 100-gram sample of radioactive element has half-life of 5 days. How many grams of the radioactive material will remain in the sample? How much it will disintegrate is different, and how much will remain, that is the different. So 12.5 grams is the remaining here. Disintegrated, here will be 0 grams. Disintegrated, here will be 50 grams. Disintegrated, here will be 50 plus 25, that is 75 grams. So this will become 75. This will become 50 grams, and plus 12.5, so it will be almost 87.5% or grams. This has been disintegrated, and only 12.5% remain. So addition of all this, whenever add all this, you will get this to be 100, 100 and 100. This number of atoms, number I am calculating, this total number of atoms will be same, that is 100, and this number will go on changing or varying as per this radioactive decay. Then question number 27, a reaction that releases more energy than is put into is called as, now there is exothermic, endothermic, a nuclear and chemical. No questions about this. So here energy required to carry out the reaction, that is endothermic, and energy released in the process of nuclear reaction, that is exothermic. So B is the correct option there. Okay. Now the next is the following reaction: 0N1, this is neutron, 92 uranium 235, this is natural uranium, then sorry, this is the enriched uranium, then this is 56 Ba141, 36 chromium, sorry, krypton 92 plus 3 neutrons, 0N1 is called. Now this is a where heavy nucleus is broken. Heavy nucleus is broken into lighter nucleus. This is first is barium, and this is krypton, this is uranium 235, and this neutron is coming in 0 and 1. This neutron is incident and 3 more neutrons are given in the process. So this is the reaction where heavier nucleus is broken into 2 smaller parts, and that's why this is a fission reaction. It's very easy to understand. Therefore, the reaction given here is the fission reaction, and hence option B is the correct. And last one, the following reaction 1H2 plus 1H3, this is deuterium plus tritium, that gives you twice He4 helium plus 1 neutron is given out. Here 2 lighter nuclei are combined, fused together to give a heavier nuclei. That's why this is the fusion reaction. So 2 lighter nuclei are coming together and it is giving rise to a heavier or larger nuclei. So this is tritium or deuterium 1H2, this is tritium, that is 1H3. They are coming together and they are giving twice He3 plus 1 neutron, 0 and 1, and this reaction is called as fusion reaction. And we all know such type of all fusion reactions takes place inside all thermonuclear reactions or in the stars like sun and all of the stars, where all several types of such type of thermonuclear reactions or fusion reactions goes on. And in that process also there is a loss of the mass gets disappeared, or the mass of the constituents is more than the mass of the final product, and therefore there is a disappearance of the mass, and this mass gets released in the form of energy, and that is what energy we receive from stars or some other galaxies or other extragalactic objects and so on. Okay, so this is what a first MCQ type of question paper we have solved based upon some of the very important concepts in the nuclear physics. So in the next lecture we will go for some further advanced questions, and that will be come to be soon there. Okay, thank you for kind cooperation still. So I'll